This
is Journal
club.
Okay. Oh, I guess first, I guess we can recap, how was your educational journey? How did you get to become a professor at UH?
Sure, yeah. So I was born in India, in southern India, and I grew up there. Went till high school. I was in the same place that I grew up in. And then I went to undergrad in electrical engineering in a university called Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, IIT Madras, it's commonly known. So it's one of those, it's a technical school, it's like MIT or Stanford kind of Caltech kind of place in India. It's one of the top. And then that's where I kind of did my undergrad, and I kind of was trying to figure out what to do. And then I decided to apply to grad school, and I came to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, UIUC, for my grad school by bioengineering, and that's where I did my PhD. And after that, I was again trying to figure out what the next steps are, and then I got an opportunity at Harvard in medical schools for doing a fellowship, postdoctoral fellowship. So I was there for 4 years and kind of did research. And after that, kind of, I decided I want to do research for a living, essentially. And so University of Houston gave me a good opportunity, and I got a good grant to kind of come to Texas. It's from the Cancer Institute of Texas, it's called CIPRIT. Okay, it's an institution in Texas which gives grants for cancer research. So I got one of those grants, and said basically that attracted me to come to Houston and kind of become a professor at the University of Houston.
Yeah.
So I have my own research lab now. I have several students, 5-6 students working, PhD students, grad students working with me, undergrads, postdocs, different kind of students working with me, and most of my time is spent on research, and I also teach in electrical and computer engineering. So I'm in AC in Houston, University of Houston. Yeah.
You said you knew you wanted to do research for a living. I've talked to a lot of grad students, and a lot of them are like, do I really want to continue a career in academia? A lot of them just go to industry. So what made you want to just keep going in academia and keep doing research?
That's a good question. So one of the things that one thing that academia allows you to do is gives you the freedom to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So in industry, everything has to be there are exceptions to this. As a general rule, in industry, you have to do something which makes money for the company. That's the bottom line. That's the basic. Whether you do research, whether you do marketing, whatever else you do, the bottom line is you need to benefit the company by making the money.
Right.
And that is good in a lot of ways. You can you get a good salary. You can if the work you do aligns with what you like doing, what you want to do, it's perfect, right? You get a lot of money and you like doing what you do. But it's there are a lot of situations where it's you compromise, where you basically have to decide, do I want to do something which pays a lot, but I'm not particularly interested in doing, or you make sometimes you have to make these kind of trade-offs. And so academia, you do the opposite, you don't get paid as much, or as in it's not bad, but it's reasonable, but the main attraction is you can truly decide what you want to do. You can structure your I want to work on these kind of problems. I want to improve this part of life. Whatever you decide to do, you can choose your own path and course your own decide what direction you want to take the field. In the sense there is a problem. I will spend half my life solving some set of problems, right? And you can't decide that, somebody else decides it for you outside. But here you can decide it for yourself, and that is valuable, at least to some people. That is more important than other things.
Right.
And in that's basically, I decided okay, this is important to me, this is not important. Right. So of course you can't it's never a perfect it's never a clear boundary. In the sense it's not like you're not getting paid anything, or
Yeah.
you get paid a little bit less, but you have more freedom. A little bit more, but less freedom. It's just a small kind of, and it depends on place to place.
Yeah.
So you meant, oh, sorry.
So I was just gonna ask. So, what drew you to like the biology side of it? Because you do have a background in EC, right? So, like,
Yeah.
what drew you to like the biology
Yeah,
side?
that's
of
a
it?
interesting question. So my parents are actually kind of. My mom is a doctor and my dad is an engineer. So in a strange way, it's like so. I
Perfect.
grew up with a little bit knowing both. So and in India, where so you actually kind of, it's the British system.
Yeah.
Where in the US you do medical school after undergrad.
Mhm.
In the British system, you actually after high school you kind of
Yeah.
do engineering or medical kind
Mhm.
of thing. And in India is the British system.
Yeah.
Like, kind of. And so I actually even got into medical school
Mhm.
at that time. I kind of was deciding I went to the kind of to say, okay, should I like take up the like kind of slot or whatever.
Yeah.
I kind of said no. At that time I said, okay, I always liked math and science.
Mhm.
But engineering, I decided to go into engineering
Mhm.
at that time.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, and afterwards I was coming back and forth between engineering and kind of medical
Mhm.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not like basic science biology, but kind of medical, kind of applied biology
Yeah,
or
right.
medicine basically. I even did in undergrad. I did a minor in biomedical.
Mhm.
So I kind of had a kind of understanding of both,
Uh-huh.
and kind of my basic goal is to kind of use engineering as kind of a tool for like improving medicine.
Mhm.
Right, so like sort of there are like different ways of approaching problems, and one of the things that kind of I found useful is that if you approach a kind of a problem like just like everyone else does,
Mhm.
it's kind of not often the best way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, there are a lot of people, smart people, who are already looking at things from
Mhm.
say the medical like one perspective.
Mhm.
If I bring a different perspective, I bring an engineering perspective
Mhm.
to a medical problem,
Yeah.
it's different enough that like not enough people would have thought about it in that
Exactly,
way.
yeah.
And therefore kind of you bring a new perspective, often it kind of, that's where innovation comes.
Mhm.
Like sort of you kind of new perspectives
Mhm.
are where innovation kind of comes about.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of, that's what attracted me.
I was going to ask actually a pretty similar question, but more focused on, like you said, you appreciate the freedom of research.
Mhm.
So how did you choose like the sub area of research that
Sometimes it's kind of you accent is not the right word. Kind of you stumble, kind of
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of you don't decide everything for yourself. There are you get some opportunities. Like so, when I started, I kind of like undergraduate education. Like one of the point of doing like studying in like getting an education, undergraduate education is you try to figure out what you want to do. You try several different things. So I did a project in kind of green energy kind of a thing. I did a project in like an industry kind of building electronic circuits and devices kind of like, and then I did a project in biomedical. So you try a few things.
Trial and error kind of.
Yes, and you kind of decide, okay, this is something which is interesting, and it's where kind of like you have new ideas. You think kind of, okay, this makes sense. Okay, this is where I can have the most impact. And then you kind of, and then the exact topics kind of you choose are things which you kind of as you go along you always improvise. To kind of give you an example, kind of when I started, I was doing kind of signal processing, image processing kind of stuff when I was in beginning of grad school. That's where I started for cancer diagnostics and stuff. I realized kind of, and I was doing some machine learning as well. Like kind of, this was in like long before, like I've been doing machine learning and kind of what people call AI, artificial intelligence, for like 18 years. Like so at that time it was not like it was before it was cool. It was like before it was well known.
Yeah.
Right.
As in that field has been there for 50 plus years, but kind of only recently has it come into kind of like the common person's imagination or the lay person's imagination, but the field has been there for a long time. And so like when I looked at that problem, kind of I realized, okay, instead of taking it head on that way, I'll come at it from a slightly different perspective. I'll actually improve instrumentation, like the instruments. Like so normally people collect data from just cameras, right? Regular
Yeah.
red, green, blue kind of color cameras. My perspective was, if you can bring in infrared imaging, which is a new technology. Instead of white light, you use infrared light. As in, this is like not my idea alone, but it's basically my PhD advisor was working on this topic. He was a pioneer in that, and so if we can improve the instruments and make the instruments better, then you then use machine learning, then we can perhaps improve cancer diagnosis and make it more effective. And so that was basically where, so you start with trying to solve one thing, and then the data tells you, or something else in the research says, maybe you need a different kind of something else needs to be changed. And so you basically are guided by the data in some ways. You start with something in mind, but afterwards you're science is always like that. It's never a straight line path.
Yeah.
It's like based on what you learn, based on the data, you kind of go in different directions.
So from what I gather, basically what we just talked about and your website, so there's basically two sides to the process. There's the technical, the imaging part, and there's also the machine learning, the interpretation.
That's right,
which one does your lab focus more on, or is it just both?
Both are equal amounts of both, actually. So there is, as you said, there is one side where we build instruments, new kinds of medical devices or instruments, which can give us new kinds of data. So my kind of principle philosophy is that, if you kind of see new things with if you can use new devices which gives you new information, then you could perhaps improve diagnostics better than if you just use everyone else is doing, just using color cameras and doing cancer diagnosis. If we can get more information or different types of information with different types of instruments, then you can use the machine learning methods that other people use and do much better.
Yeah.
So you build instruments is one side of my lab. The other side is use algorithms, like machine learning algorithms, on that new data that we collect, to improve kind of diagnostic accuracy or different kinds of solve problems, like medical problems.
So you think that this infrared imaging and other imaging, new imaging technologies versus traditional HD staining and just microscopy, you think that's the future of cancer pathology?
I believe it's so.
non-invasive, right? I think.
Yes, it's going in that direction. Yeah. So I can tell you where, as in, it's not yet there, but that's where it's going. So one problem in medicine is in kind of how to diagnose and kind of look at how diseases progress, what's called prognosis, what happens in the disease kind of in the future, kind of thing. So basically, if you right now, for a lot of cancers, if you're suspected of cancer, you after some screening tests, they do a biopsy.
Right.
They take a needle, take a sample out of the tumor or suspected region, and then they cut it into slices, put different chemical stains like H&E and different kind of panel of IHC stains, and then look at it. A pathologist, a doctor, looks at it under a microscope and makes decisions based on the patterns that you see. So that that's this kind of traditional pipeline. So where I see this going is you can. So in the beginning, it may be that you still have to take a biopsy, but you kind of put it on a slide. You don't need to do anything. You put it under a machine, and it basically does infrared imaging of the sample without any intervention, and then the machine learning algorithm essentially does the pattern recognition for you and gives you a diagnosis. That's kind of the first step of that's, I think, very doable, and in the short to medium term, that's feasible. And in the long run, you can actually make devices which go inside the body and can actually give you a diagnosis immediately. You might, I don't know if you've heard of endoscopes or some devices of that sort, where, say, for example, you look inside, say, the food pipe or the throat, and look at some, it's essentially a camera on a flexible kind of a device, and you can see inside, you can see what so a doctor looks at an endoscope, the images from an endoscope. I'm sorry. Let me turn off my phone. So a doctor looks at the images from an endoscope and kind of looks at the patterns and says, okay, this is suspicious, let me take a biopsy.
Right.
I think like what is kind of reasonable, like where I see this going is, you build an endoscope kind of a device, but you don't even need to kind of do a kind of remove the sample or biopsy and do anything else. Hopefully we can kind of use infrared imaging, look at the sample like inside the body and immediately kind of give a diagnosis right there. That will be much faster and much more convenient, much easier. What is it called, at the point of care, at the place where the patient is.
Real-time imaging and diagnosis.
Correct, exactly.
What do you think the implications will be for different professions like pathologists or gastroenterologists who use endoscopies to diagnose?
So that's interesting. So endoscopies still will do the procedures and stuff. Pathologists, pathology is already evolving. So there are I think it's a kind of so often in these cases, in many situations there'll be a clear yes and a clear no, right? But the ambiguous cases where you're not sure, it's unclear, that's where a pathologist, instead of spending all their time doing the routine kind of stuff, they can focus mostly on the difficult, ambiguous cases. So their time is very precious, and they get it's valuable. So they can spend their time doing the kind of interesting and difficult things. And so it's like, say, in some routine, so it's true of if you write software or build a robot, do something, right? There are some things which are routine, like tightening screws or welding, which a robot can do. But there are other fine things which are harder to do, which humans will kind of do. So it will change, and it's very hard to predict how things go. But it's an evolving kind of so the pathologist will learn new things, so to give you an example, pathologists right now look at just the H&E patterns in different stains, right? They may start looking at infrared imaging data and look for new kinds of patterns in the new data. So that is something they have not tried, and so they will learn new skills and adapt to new kind of technology.
So it won't threaten jobs, it'll make them more efficient.
Yes, as in, I wouldn't say exactly that. There will be some things which you will do less of or stop doing, but there will be something the same person will can do different things, or more of some other thing, right? So it's that's at least that's my perspective on things. It's so there are for example, there are some not pathologists, but some other classes of jobs which machine learning or artificial intelligence can actually disrupt dramatically, right? Something relatively routine. It's already happening. It's not like tomorrow. It's a lot of things are happening today. But when it comes to medicine is much more conservative in the sense that it's people don't change the way you do things quickly. And that has its good and bad things. If you so the good thing is that you are kind of cautious and careful. You don't make mistakes when people's lives are at stake. If you if you're grammar checking software, right, something like that, right? It's if the software makes a mistake, it's not the end of the world, right? You write a poorly worded email, maybe, right? It's life is not at stake. So you can be more you can do something and throw it out there and see if it works. It's fine. But if it comes to if somebody's life and death is at stake, right, you have to be much more cautious when you make a change, when you may invent a new device, invent a new method, invent a new drug, whatever it is. Why does it take such a long time to so there are legitimate criticisms of the way things are done, because it's changing it is hard. There are a lot of procedures, a lot of you have to do a 5-year study to figure out if it works or not, right? So people especially young people when I was in grad school, I also thought the same way. Basically, why don't we just change things quickly, right? But the problem is, if somebody's life is on the line, you want to be careful, double, triple check your work and study it for 5 years to make sure not that there'll never be any problems, but you understand what the side effects are, you understand what the issues are, you understand what problems there are before you jump into it.
Yeah.
So medicine is like that because it's higher stakes, and in that sense, that's why I'm saying pathologists or other doctors like you take one step at a time slowly and build up to where you want to go, and you don't just change everything overnight. And in that's the reason why I think the disruption will be slower, but it'll be kind of like cautious has its downsides as well, because slower means like
less people helped.
Yes, less people are being helped. Like you could you could have saved somebody's life with the new medicine, but it was not tested, and therefore you didn't give them the medicine. So that is a legitimate criticism. But so you have I think it's reasonable to err on the side of caution when somebody's life is at stake.
Right.
So that's why I think it will not be as disruptive to medicine as other things. But I think it's the most promising, right? If you can get it right. Yeah.
And so also building off of that, speaking of implementation, how soon do you think that infrared imaging and things like that will actually be implemented into practice? Because there are limitations, I assume, such as high costs of cameras and things like that.
Absolutely no. So in every kind of industry that is especially in medicine, it's a very big concern, cost cost effectiveness, and often the way it works is this is true of a lot of technologies, not just medicine. When you do something for the very first time, it's very, very expensive because the research, people put in billions of dollars into research. The government, NIH and other government agencies spend money to kind of, which lays the foundation, the basic fundamental research that's done, and then people build on top of that, and then people build on top of that. So there are several levels of innovation that goes into this, and so basically, in the beginning, the cost will be relatively high, but over time, there is what is called economies of scale. As you make more and more of it, things get much cheaper and cheaper, and that's how so I think it's it's unrealistic to expect the cost to be low at the very beginning, but over time, if it becomes the new standard, then it becomes less. So to give you different technologies like consumer electronics, right? When the first digital cameras were invented, they were $1,000, $2,000 each, or even more, right? But then over time, when every cell phone started having cameras, you can have 3 of them for $1, right? Over time. So, but it took 30 years to do that. It didn't even something color cameras haven't become good quality and kind of when it is invented, it's not it is expensive. But over time it becomes less expensive. So I think that's the trajectory of most of these things.
Okay.
I have a question kind of working backwards about more in the research process. I know a lot of people are discouraged when they do research, either in undergrad or graduate school, maybe supplementary in medical school or something. And they don't want to go down that path because they think it takes so long to make a difference. So I was wondering, kind of in your experience, how long does it take to develop any technology?
So so that's a kind of, so the way I think about it is, research is always for the long run. It's so something like 5 years or 10 years time frame is reasonable. That's kind of, so a PhD is typically of the duration of 5 years. Undergrad is 4 years or so, right? And then PhD, grad school, masters is 1 or 2 years, and PhD is 5 years or so. And if you want to go to medical school, that's a different route. So so there are different kinds of research often is one of those things where you build on top of what people what kind of came before you, and then you take it to a different level, and somebody else will take it to the next level, and so on. So in that sense, it's you have to think research is for people who think for the long run, in a way. And it is fair to say that research takes longer, but 5 to 10 years is kind of the time frame you are thinking about. And even that's true even in medicine, right? So for example, one of the reasons people are attracted to medicine is that you can see the results immediately. That may be true of, say, ER or surgery or some set of things. It's not true if you're a diabetes doctor, right? It's like you don't see instant, like some kinds of, even as a doctor, you don't see instant results all the time.
Right.
You see things like rehabilitation, like kind of physical therapy, kind of a rehabilitation kind of sciences. Like there, it takes 6 months or a year. Like it's all these things. Like a lot of things take time. It's not always kind of quick and kind of yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about like imaging and then using machine learning, so like CNNs to analyze images. Does your lab work with any sequencing technology, like integrating the images with spatial transcriptomics at all?
I actually have, believe it or not, I have explored some of that. It's ongoing research, and actually we have studied, like kind of, we have looked at some of these kind of sequencing technologies and how it can benefit like some of the work where I'm doing, and the initial results are quite promising. And so it's that is a whole kind of it's another kind of parallel universe where you like sequencing has become a big deal in the past 10-15 years. And so like at least in my lab we are kind of actually working with some of these things now, and like once we have good results I can talk more about that.
I'll bring you back.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, because I don't know if we touched on this earlier, but what made you like initially interested in specifically like infrared spectroscopy instead of Oh, okay, then never mind.
It's okay. Yeah.
This is kind of backing off the research heavy stuff. Just what was your greatest challenge in your whole journey?
It's so at every stage you find kind of challenges. Like sort of at every kind of so for example, when you're in grad school, there were like you go through lots of ups and downs, and like sort of for example one of the times there were like several months when you were trying some theory, working on some theory, it's not working properly. If you're trying to kind of do some experimental or think of some experimental stuff, that's not working. Things don't work. And when you're in science, that's fundamentally like most of the time it kind of things don't work out. Like you try 10 things, 9 may not work. But the one thing that really does work is kind of really used very good kind of, and that's kind of like you have this oh wow kind of so the thing about research like the thing that kind of is hard to explain kind of if you're not from a science background is there is like sort of at some point you figure out something that nobody in the world knows about. Right? You know something, and you have figured out something which nobody else knows or figures out or has figured out in the like ever, right? And that is when you kind of, but like getting to that, because you put in a lot of effort, so you go through a lot of frustration because like you have tried so many things, it didn't, those ideas didn't work. But once it does work, then it's like extra, like so you feel great. Kind of, so it's but the 9 times like the failures along the way can be quite kind of, you need to have the perseverance, like kind of you need to kind of you need to go through those difficult times, and like sort of some people give up in the middle, but if you can go through, like because a lot of the ideas that you get are because it's research is fundamentally kind of things other people haven't thought about. So like even when you think about things, you may not get the like kind of get to the correct answer like in your first shot. You may have some ideas which may not work out, and that's when you kind of have to put in the kind of effort to kind of, okay, I'll try this, I'll try that, try different things, and that's tough. Like that's not for everyone. Like sometimes people just, okay, I couldn't figure it out, I stop. Kind of. It's like that's a hard part, and then like sort of there are a lot of other things. Kind of getting into good schools is not easy, as you all know. So that's another kind of challenge. Which so in India it's kind of quite competitive. It's a country of 1.5 billion people, and you can imagine a lot of students, high school students, and so you're all competing for the same kind of top universities, and so it's not easy. And so that's another kind of
Do you have any advice for like aspiring researchers?
No. So like I think you already like being in a good school, high school itself is like a good. You have a leg up compared to most other people, kind of. And like one thing is like sort of try to seek out opportunities, and when you are presented with opportunities, kind of like you make the best of it. In a sense, kind of like you will kind of over time, like sort of if you're looking, you will get more and more opportunities, and when you get those opportunities, kind of make the most of it, because I think it's at least in the it's not like over time, it's like it right now, like if I kind of miss one opportunity or something, I don't mind. But when I was younger and kind of when I was in high school or college and stuff, everything probably mattered a little bit more, like a lot more, in a sense. And so just take every single opportunity that you get now. And that's something I would say.
That's pretty good, because like all of us are like involved in some sort of research or another. So
okay. What kind of research are you?
Mine is mostly like ophthalmology related with like machine learning.
I did research over the summer on like atrial fibrillation, sorry. Okay. And yeah, kind of like a biophysical approach, proteins and stuff.
Where did you do that?
Baylor.
Oh, Baylor. Okay. Nice. Did you do something? Yeah.
Yeah, I have like maybe two main focuses. One is on like platelet kinematics and using like machine learning to simulate their motion and stuff. And then the other one's on like polystyrene, so plastic.
Okay.
And also like machine learning. And,
I see.
Yeah, mine's all like epigenetics, DNA methylation, and its relation to aging.
So this was in the medical center as well?
It's all virtual research. It's like Indiana University. So
okay.
A little far away.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah. No, it's when you get these kind of opportunities, like it's good to kind of follow up, make sure if you can publish a paper, if you can do whatever, like or present it as a conference presentation, seminar presentation, whatever flows from that. Kind of follow up and kind of use that as something kind of make the best of that.
Yeah.
Kind of if you found something interesting or cool, kind of make sure kind of write it up in a journal or write it up as a conference paper, go and do a presentation on that, at a useful, good place, kind of where to a scientific audience, something of that sort, which could be helpful,
recently there's been a lot more opportunities for high school students to engage in research. Like conferences are opening up to high school submissions.
Yeah, it's actually a relatively new trend.
Yeah.
It's good. I think it's good to do that. Like sort of most of the conferences I go to, it's even undergrads are a very few number. Like high school is very unlikely, but even undergrads it'll be one or two out of a conference of 1,000. Kind of it'll be relative. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but kind of it's not as many as one would expect. But I'm glad that it's kind of opening up to high schools. Good conferences, those are valuable. It's valuable experience, like kind of science, like talking to people who do science kind of for a living or kind of on a regular basis. You kind of get to know how they think. You get to learn from people. It's not just about exactly what you're doing. It's about science is more about the process. It's not about the final answer kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's how you think. Like when you're as a scientist, the main thing is you're kind of trying to figure out how you're wrong, which is often counterintuitive. Like not about what is the correct answer or something. As in terms of scientific research, the biggest question you are asking is is this correct? How could this be wrong? Like where could the mistakes be, or where is the problem? Like kind of you're asking questions in a slightly different way. You're kind of by fixing all the mistakes or figuring out where you're wrong and then correcting it. That's really how you make progress, which is kind of an inverted way of thinking. It's not like kind of what you read in textbooks, right? This happens, this happens. So it's often we work backwards, from where what we don't know is the more important thing.
Yeah. So like in academia, I think it's not just about the research, it's about teaching as well. Like as a grad student, you have to mentor the undergrads, as a postdoc, you might have to teach the grad students some stuff. So you think like teaching is definitely a big part of wanting, like you have to love teaching to go into academia.
Yes, definitely. So there are like some institutions where you just do research alone, but that's not a majority. A majority are places where you go do teaching and research, and it's actually good to do both. And at least in my experience, so when you teach something, you also kind of, when you're trying to explain something in simple ways, you also kind of think about it in like kind of new ways, and you kind of when you're explaining, you learn a lot.
Right.
The process of teaching, in fact, like I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but if you're trying to teach something to somebody else, just your own topic, that's when you learn the most. It's one of those things which
memorization hacks.
Right?
Oh, I was just saying it's like a memorization hack.
If you can dumb it down, you understand it.
Yeah, it's so when I'm teaching, like when I'm trying to teach something, is kind of it really helps me think, and that's when you kind of it makes a big difference kind of in the process of teaching itself. It helps the students, of course, like sort of you explaining in a way that they have to understand. That's the most important thing, but it also helps me with kind of figuring out things. And kind of, the first time I did that, I taught my sister. Like I have a sister who is a bit 3 years younger than me, and so when she was like kind of when I was in undergrad, like I used to teach her high school stuff like that. And so when I was teaching her, I could kind of really kind of see that like I understood it much better in so many ways. And in that sense, kind of ever since that, like whenever, like sort of, if I try to teach whatever I'm learning to somebody, I found that I like at the end I really understand it so much better. And yeah, that's another kind of So that's, I think, in fact, I think historically that's the reason why teaching and research go together. It actually helps to teach, both for the student who is learning and for the person who is teaching as well. So.
And I think like a lot of people who are outside of STEM or like research, they like underestimate how important communication is like in our fields. Like even in science fair presentations or like conferences, all of it is about, can you get your ideas across, not how good is your work, right?
That is true. It's something, at least it's one thing I've found is, like coming from India, like sort of it's underemphasized in India. I can only speak from my personal experience on this, like kind of, it's kind of, I didn't know how to present well for like sort of, even like at the end of undergrad I was not good at it. But I really sort of, one thing that, a good thing that I kind of, my advisor in graduate school helped me with was, we presented literally every week or every other week at group meetings, like sort of in front of like 5-10 students or a few students. Every week, if you keep practicing communication, kind of explaining and stuff, and by the end, like when you go to a conference, you really have practiced and you know how to talk, right? And that I did that for 5 years, and so I got a lot of practice. And that, like, he helped me. Kind of, my advisor was kind of instrumental in kind of like improving my skills. But as in, it's kind of, it is underappreciated. I agree with what you're saying. Kind of, I think in the US it's a bit better. You present in class. You at least it's like, but at least from. In India, it is not as kind of, you're really seldom present in class or do things of that sort. So in a sense, it was even worse for me when I started off.
At University of Houston, like, you mentioned you taught a class there. Is that where the undergraduates, where they mainly, like, they learn about your research, they might, like, contact you after the class to try to join your lab? Or, like, what exactly do you look for in undergraduates to, like, let them join your lab?
When you're in class, you know the students who are asking a lot of questions, and who kind of, if you answer their questions, they get it. Like you can see that they understand what you're talking about, right? Like you get a sense for a kind of first they ask questions. Second is kind of when you answer the question and they're able to understand what exactly is the kind of they get it. And so and when you see that a few times, then you kind of know who are the good students, and kind of it doesn't. Some people may just not be interested in some of the topics, and I don't blame them for it. They're learning something, but it's not kind of they may be interested in a completely different topic. For example, they may be interested in solar energy or something of that sort. My class is not on that. But so I don't blame them. Okay, everyone has to be interested in what I'm interested in. That you can't expect that, right? So, but the people who are interested in what I'm talking about, they will follow up, and they can kind of. I've had several projects of that sort. Undergrads have come and kind of worked with me on longer projects, 6 months or longer projects, because they were interested.
I mean, I think this is kind of a necessary question in just the landscape right now. Just where do you see the intersection of your research and machine learning, AI? What's your vision for that in the future?
So there are a lot of things which are going on which I'm not an expert on in AI. For example, large language models. I understand what they are. I know what is going on, at least better than most 99% of the people. But my focus is on biomedical AI as it applies to medicine.
Right.
That's where my expertise is in. And there, I think it can have a very big impact. For example, automated diagnostics, real-time diagnostics. That's, I think, and I think progress will possibly be a bit slower than people expect, but I think it will have the biggest impact because it will improve health. And it's in some, so at least in my mind, the kind of the net benefit is very clear. In some situations, when you use AI, the benefit is not obvious. It could be good, it could actually be bad. For example, if AI writes essays for you, right? It may be good in the short run. You may be able to write better. The essays that you submit may be better, but you're losing something. Perhaps because you don't know how to write well, right? There is a trade-off of sorts, and so it's not, the net benefit is not obvious. But in medicine, the net benefit is quite, at least to me, it's quite clear. If you can improve diagnosis, if you can make or improve prognosis, if you can catch cancer early, or if you can make it more accurate, or if you can say, okay, this is the problem exactly, and therefore we need to give you this medicine and not this. If you can do that through AI, then it's sort of the downsides are small and the upsides are very, very big. And in that sense, AI in medicine, at least in my mind, is a clear kind of a positive for society. I won't say that everything that has to do with AI is net positive for society. I don't believe that. But I think there are, especially in medicine, it's a net positive. And that's what I'm working towards, kind of making this better, sort of combination of hardware and software to kind of make medicine, kind of medical imaging and diagnostics better.
So in the future, sure, there may be automated diagnosis, but these models are all black box. So do you think clinicians and patients will trust that?
That's an excellent question. That's a very hard question. So it's called AI interpretability, basically, if it's a black box. So in fact, I'm working on one of those problems. The reason why if it's a pure black box, medicine, doctors or as just people, we can't trust it, right? As in, you don't know where the problems are if it's a black box, right? So one of the things that I'm working on in my lab is in this infrared imaging, we use so when you say it's this is graded as a cancer, a certain tissue is cancerous or something, if it makes a decision, you can look back under the hood, and in the algorithm you can, because infrared imaging, so at different wavelengths you get different different molecules give you signatures. So you can look at the molecular signatures and say, okay, because of this molecular signature, it's this amount of weight is given to this molecular signature, this amount of weight is given to this molecular signature. So inside the algorithm you can see what were the important molecular features that were used to make the decision. So basically this is one solution to the problem of interpretation.
So just human double checking.
Yes, you can go inside, and so this is not true of all algorithms. So you have to use the correct kind of data and the correct kind of algorithms, which allow you to see inside and kind of figure out what made the decision.
Right.
Once you do that, that's when kind of at least I think that's when the doctors will be more willing to kind of
Trust.
okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Like the doctors can trust it. And even people as like we as people who will, doctors will kind of advise you to do something, but kind of in the end people have to decide, right? Like sort of can I trust this? Can I trust the decision of an algorithm, right? If you can see inside and actually have a molecular basis for it. So the molecular basis in my mind is kind of one of the things that is important. And the infrared technologies that I'm working with allows you to gives you that molecular information. And that way, I think that bridge of kind of how to kind of be sure that you're actually kind of, it's not some random thing that you're kind of, it's a clear molecular signature or set of signatures is what is making the decision. I think as in other people have different solutions to the interpretability problem, like sort of the black box, how to see inside the black box, and so there are different people working on different kinds of things. But this is my approach to answering your question of like kind of having a clear kind of answer. Like,
Interesting.
What time is it?
4:26.
Yeah, we should wrap up soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No.
Let's all signing off. Wait, no, we have to go in order. Like
What's the order?
Kevin Chen signing off.